Peace, love, and balance. The Gnostic Dread here. Today I wanted to make a video about both building an Ancestor altar and building a Deity altar and explaining them both to you. So let's get started right into it. We'll first start with an Ancestor altar. Now in a lot of ways, you want your Ancestor altar to be your first altar. The reason for that is because you want your ancestors to be venerated and honored first and foremost, for they are the reason you're here, and they can help you tremendously in this lifetime. When your ancestors transition on from this life, you know they are not truly dead, they are still living, and they can be communicated with via the Ancestor altar. Communicating with your ancestors and invoking their energy not only benefits them, but also it can tremendously benefit you as they can get work done for you behind the scenes. So getting started with building the altar, you'll first want to go ahead and find a space made out of natural material. You need to use plastic or something else, you can go ahead and do that, but you should use natural material. As you can see here, this is wood, and even though this is my bookshelf, this is actually my grandmother's old bookshelf, and this is what I'm building an Ancestor altar for today anyway, so all her energy is on this bookshelf to begin with. So you want to start off with something like this, some type of bookshelf or something. Then you want to lay down an altar cloth. This is so it doesn't get messy and everything up here, and then like candle wax or incense or anything else doesn't ruin the material. See? So now the first thing you want to do is have the elements represented. So we're going to first start with earth. Earth can be represented through actual dirt from outside, a flower, or anything like that. I'm going to use this gemstone, and you can use your stones, your crystals. The reason why I'm using this particular crystal is because this is actually my grandmother's crystal. I never knew she had it while she was living, but when we were going through her stuff when she passed and transitioned on, I seen she had this crystal. I'm not exactly sure what crystal it is, so maybe somebody who's like really knowledgeable in crystals can help me out with that. But we're going to sit that there to represent the earth. Next, we're going to represent water. So I have this double shot glass full of water. And another thing about this shot glass is this is my grandmother's double shot glass. So I'm going to use her double shot glass, have water in there. Now the water is used to represent the element of water, obviously, but it's always good practice to have water on your altar anyway, especially when there's candles burning or anything, just in case something goes wrong. God forbid that happen, but you never know. So it's just good practice to even have water on your altar, but it's there like to represent the element of water. Next, we're going to have air represented, and air is going to be represented through incense. So got this little incense holder there. There's some incense right up on top of there. So the incense will represent air. And I like to use cone incense, but you can use stick incense, any type of incense. You know, I just like to use cone because I'm working with a little bit of small space right now. So, but any type of incense will do. And then finally, we're going to represent fire. Now, a lot of people can get a glass candle or whatnot, but I do something a little differently. I have this natural Himalayan salt candle holder. So I'm going to go ahead and put that up there. Let me not spill the water. Okay, so now I got the candle holder up there like that. For now, I'm just going to use this little tea candle. Put it on it there. And that'll represent your fire. So now you have your elements represented on your Ancestor altar. That's going to be a common theme on all the altars, is you always want to have the elements represented. So now that we have our 4 elements, we're going to place our ancestors on the altar. Now, if you're building a general Ancestor altar, you can either, and you don't know your certain ancestors' names or something like that, you can either write your family name on a piece of paper and sit on the altar. You can put a bonsai tree or some type of small plant or something, some type of small tree to represent your family tree. Or if you're building an Ancestor altar for specific ancestors that you know and everything, you can just go ahead and put their pictures right there. So that's my grandmother. She transitioned on about 3 years ago, about 2.5 years ago rather. So this is going to be my Ancestor altar for her. So after you put your ancestor on the altar, you're pretty much essentially finished, but you want to add some things to the altar so you can invoke your ancestors' energy. So this will be things that they're into, things that they owned, or things like that. Like I said, this entire bookshelf was my grandmother's. This lamp that actually sits on it, that's actually was my grandmother's. The shot glass is my grandmother's, the stone. So a lot of my grandmother's energy is already invoked in this altar already, but I am going to add some more stuff to it. So my grandmother wore this perfume a lot and everything, and she had it in her room, so I go ahead and sit that right there. Well, let me make sure I don't fall over. So now I have the perfume that's invoking her energy. Also, my grandmother was very into SpongeBob and gambling and everything, and look at this. She had a pack of SpongeBob playing cards, so go ahead and set that on the altar too and everything to have our energy invoked there. So there you have it. This is actually a very simple yet effective still ancestor altar and everything. And if you have more space to work with and everything, you can add a lot more to it. Add different flowers that your ancestors like. If they like to smoke, add cigarettes and everything. And a lot of people like to burn ancestor money and do offerings like that. I personally don't ascribe to that. I mean, every now and then, like on a certain day, special day, if I know my grandma like to drink some Coors Light, so I'll go ahead and pour some Coors Light in a cup and everything and place it on the ancestor altar. Like, have a drink with my grandmother while I'm communicating with her. But I'm just not one that ascribes to ancestor money and all that. But other people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, but this would also be the place where you'd have some place in the middle. If I go ahead and move that, you'd be able to like maybe sit a plate here and everything. You can offer up food, any type of sustenance and everything, because there's the belief that your ancestors, even though they transition on, they still need the energy. I feel as if our energy can come from the love and affection that we give and we show them and everything, because it's not like, in my eyes, it's not like they're physical beings anymore that actually need like physical feelings like that, like hunger and whatnot. That's just my view, but you can do whatever you like, whatever your intuition, whatever is vibing with you. Again, I feel as if giving my energy and giving my time and devotion to the altar is feeding my ancestors. So that's how I'm going to go about with that. But yeah, that's where you would have that money. If you wanted to offer ancestor money or make offerings, you'd make it right here. And yeah, that's pretty much how you would do the whole ancestor altar. I mean, in my own craft and practice, the way I go about it, I wake up in the morning, I'll just speak to my grandmother, light the candle, I'll have that burn until it burns out. That's why I only use a tea light candle, just something simple so it doesn't burn all day. You don't need to have it burning all day. You light the incense so it's invoking our energy, and yeah, just speak to them like your ancestors still here, because they're definitely still living. So that's the ancestor altar. Now let's go ahead and get started on showing you how to build a deity altar. One thing I did previously forget to mention was that you want to have some sort of bell or something equivalent on your ancestor altar that's used when you want to go and invoke them. If you look up here, I have this wind chime that was my grandmother's as well. So when I invoke her, I just give that a ring, and that's used just to invoke their energy and bring them into this space. So that's just a little FYI that I forgot to mention before. Now let's get into building the deity altar. Now we're going to build the deity altar. Your deity altar is your working altar. This is a space set aside to work your magic and your spell work. The basics of building this altar is going to be very similar to building an ancestor altar, with wanting a natural material table, like wood, putting an altar cloth on it, and adding the 4 elements to it. As you see, I already have the element earth represented with my crystals. Now the difference with this altar is, a lot what you add to this altar is going to be very unique to you, starting with the deities that you add. Now I'm very into Hermetic tradition, so the deities I use are Ma'at and Tahuti. On this altar especially, it's very important that you always have both the male and the female principles represented. So Ma'at is my female principle, and Tahuti is my male principle. So let me go ahead and add them to the altar now. Okay, so as you see here now, I have Ma'at and Tahuti both represented on my altar. Now you also are going to want to go ahead and get the candles to add to them too. You want a black candle for the goddess, and a white candle for the god. So let me go ahead and add them now too. So as you see now, I both have the black candle for the goddess Ma'at, and the white candle for the god Tahuti. So, and the candles are also representing fire. Let me remind you. Next, you want to add incense to it. So, have another incense holder. Start and place that there. Place some incense in there. And the incense is going to represent air. And then we'll have water represent it when we add our magical tools, which we're going to add next. So now we're going to add our wand to the altar, which represents our will. And that's going to go on the right side because all masculine goes on the right side, all feminine goes on the left side. Next, we're adding our chalice. Our chalice represents our understanding and our intuition. And now you'd pour water in the chalice, and that can be used to represent the water. Next, we're going to add the athame. That represents our reason and intellect. And now, traditionally, you'd want to add a pentacle to your altar. But if you look above my altar, I have my ankh, and I have the pentacle I wear around my neck. See there? I have both of them hanging above my altar, and they represent the earth and provide protection for your space. So that's how I use my pentacle. I'm going to add another Himalayan salt candle holder to my altar. And there you have it, a fully functioning deity altar that has all the basic parts necessary for me to work my magic and spell work in a sanctified space. Now let me go and break down different parts of the altar more in depth for you. So to follow up with what I was saying earlier, after you have all your basic functioning parts established on your altar, everything else you add to your altar is going to be uniquely between you and your deities. Your altar should be understood as being an outward expression of your inner mind, so it should reflect that in all ways, including the deities you choose to represent on your deity altar. It should be remembered that as Gnostics, we don't understand these deities to be literal beings or anything outside of us that we worship, especially when we're on the left-hand path. No, indeed, these deities are aspects of self that are inside of us and within and throughout the universe. As above, so below. Being that I deal with both Gnosticism and Hermeticism is pretty obvious why I chose Tahuti to be the god that I represent. He's also the god of magic, writing, and I'm a writer, so it goes well together. Ma'at, I chose her as my goddess because of the fact that that's Tahuti's wife, and the laws of Ma'at, the whole principles behind it, balance, is something that really resonates well with me. So I have a whole article written about that on my site. If you haven't read it yet, you can go ahead and check that out. I'll link it in the description. Again, you have your black candle, which represents the goddess, your white candle, which represents the god, and they also represent the element of fire on your altar. I have all my crystals here on the altar. They obviously represent the element earth. You see them, I have the 5 platonic solids and chakra pyramids included on there. There are some people that say you shouldn't put crystals on your altar because they take away energy from your altar, being that they're living things themselves. But I personally just don't see it this way. I mean, the whole reason why we carry crystals on us is because it amplifies our energy, right? So I don't understand why they would take energy away from the altar. I believe they amplify energy on the altar. So I feel it's perfectly fine that you can put crystals on your altar. But if that doesn't resonate with you, then so be it. The element of air is represented with the incense. This is also the incense you want to light when you're doing spell work. And water is represented, as I said earlier, within the chalice. This space here in the middle, you always want to have clear because that's where you're going to be doing your spell work. Whether it be you're doing candle magic here, you're doing jars, you're putting the oil and blessing it. All your magic work is going to be done here within the circle. So you want to have this space clear. I showed you this Himalayan salt candle holder. So I got that because I'm going to put another candle in there. Here it is. And that'll be another daily candle that you can burn there daily. Now, you can use your altar daily, and you should use your altar daily. Even if you're not doing magic and spell work daily, you should come to your altar and every morning and meditate in front of it so that you can put in energy into the altar. The more energy you put into the altar, the more powerful it'll become and everything. And then that way, when you do your spell work and everything through the altar, your magic and everything will be all the more potent. Now, depending on who your deities are, or what tradition you're going with, you can add things that your deity would like to the altar. That's fine. As you see back here, Tahuti's known as being the moon god. So, I actually have a moon crystal wand. It's still masculine, but it's the moon, which Tahuti is the god, or said to be the god of, or a moon god, rather. So I have that over there. For my eye, like I said, it's all about balance. So balancing the chakras, that goes well with that. But also dealing with the Hermetic tradition and everything is very into geometry. So there's our sacred geometry things. So I have that there. So I have things on the altar that does represent the deities and things that would resonate to them. And you can add more to it and everything and make it uniquely yours. And that's it. I showed you how to build an ancestor altar, and I showed you how to build a deity altar. Now there is a third altar that I will be building, which I'll put in a second video, but that'll be exclusive to my patrons. So if you would like to see that video, please become a patron and support the Gnostic Dread. I appreciate you all for being audiences, and if you like this video, please go ahead and like, subscribe, and don't forget to share it with your friends. Thank you. Peace, love, and balance.